So, Senator Martin, we're deeply concerned about the future of the intercollegiate Olympic sports on college campuses across the country with the $2.8 billion House versus NCAA settlement. That's, Division I athletic departments, many of them now are trying to find $20.5 million that they can share with football and basketball players primarily. Our concern is what will happen is there'll be this mass reallocation of resources away from intercollegiate sports to primarily football and basketball. So we're part of a coalition of 20 intercollegiate sport coaches associations, and we've been spending a lot of time down in Washington, D.C., meeting with staffs of politicians, both on the Republican side, the Democrat side. We've been to the White House. And it feels like some type of antitrust protection is going to have to be granted to the NCAA because the lawsuits are lined up as far as the eye can see. So we've been advocating for two priorities to be part of any bill that might get passed through Congress. There's currently on the House of Representatives side something called the SCORE Act. And it's sort of the House version of the antitrust bill. And our two priorities, our first priority is a requirement that Division I athletic departments would have to provide a minimum of 16 sports to be Division I. Okay. That's actually been an NCAA bylaw for probably 40 years, as long as I can remember. The challenge is an NCAA bylaw can be changed really easily. If it's part of an antitrust bill, it would be a lot harder to change. So for the schools that are opting in for this revenue share, that they don't have to share all $20.5 million, but if they share $1 or $20 million, we'd like them to have a minimum of 16 sports. And by the way, even if that's in the bill, there's a lot of schools out there that sponsor a lot more than 16 sports. Right. So that doesn't prevent carnage. It just limits the carnage, right? The second priority is some type of a minimum funding level for these Olympic sports. And when I say Olympic sports, basketball is technically Olympic sport, but by definition, we're talking about sports other than football and basketball. We've been advocating for some type of a minimum funding floor because that way we don't want to have 16 sports, but they can be funded as if they're intramural or club sports, or maybe they have to be entirely self-funded. Right. And currently in the SCORE Act, we have the 16 sport minimum is in there. We're still working hard to try to get this minimum funding floor in there. We've been told that possibly it may go for a vote on the House floor sometime in October. I mean, who knows? But we seem to have at least a foothold there. I'd be interested, because you've been very involved here at the state level, I'd love to know just your perspective, one, on those two priorities, and number two, maybe some things we're not thinking about that would be good for us to think about.
Yeah, it's an issue that can be very frustrating, and it was actually the frustration with the lack of action by the NCAA when we started to see how these things were winding up in court, where this was going, and not seeing the NCAA take action that would apply to all 50 states. And so it led us, I wrote the first NIL law that went into effect. I think technically we went into effect on July 1st and a few years back. But we've had to continue to make changes, almost playing whack-a-mole now versus because of what other states are doing to compete. And it was really evident that, well, two things. One is you're starting to see certain regions of the country where we just going to basically, is collegiate athletics going to be the Big Ten in the SEC, and any other opportunity isn't going to be there. But we also started to see and had concerns over some of the changes that we saw occurring in other states and the things that are being discussed, like making NIL income tax free, and what kind of impact that would mean. Because quite frankly, once you open that door, so many things end up getting litigated, and then you have these judicial precedents where if you start paying athletes, then my concern is, especially a state like Pennsylvania that has multiple professional sports teams in different sports, that is it now going to be, well, someone's going to sue and say, well, if this athlete doesn't have to pay for the $1 million he's getting, why am I having to pay for doing the same exact thing? And nothing is beyond belief. We'll see what can come out of these court decisions. So we did I sponsored and wrote a resolution urging Congress or the NCAA to, demanding that you guys have to take action. This is going to destroy college sports. It's going to be just states one-upping each other constantly and finding new ways to get the edge on recruiting. So for me, the future of not only all of college sports, but whether sports actually can exist on different campuses. Because I've already seen colleges that are throwing their hands up, and I believe the one example that was real prominent, they waited until after the March Madness tournament, I think it was St. Francis.
Yeah, went Division
That
III,
went from, you have this incredible basketball program, they decided, and I think they turned so many of their sports into club sports. Like they don't want to deal with, the craziness. But they have to address on a federal level, if the NCAA isn't going to act, they have to address clear guidelines with NIL, ones that are fair to athletes, but have to protect other sports and opportunities for people. And part of this also is the transfer portal. That has to be, there has to be conditions set on this. I can't see, when I see athletes from Alabama on the football team going into the portal, collecting money to go to the University of Iowa, and before even preseason camp's over, getting another NIL deal and going back to another school in the SEC to collect more money. It's wrong. Right. It's dangerous for the future of college sports, and I was very excited to see President Trump actually bring this to the forefront of saying he wanted to address it, but getting it through the Congress, the Senate, and the U.S. House is really critically important, and it's really important. I'm glad to hear that you're part of a coalition making your voices heard, because there's always voices in someone's ear to protect other interests or who may not want to see this happen. But quite frankly, it needs to. If we want to have college sports in the future, we have to have a standard that applies to a level playing field for schools in all 50 states.
Well, it is my understanding in the SCORE Act that they have this preemption, which would be a federal NIL law that would get out of this situation where every state has different NIL laws. So it seems like that would be a good thing. There's also language in there that specifically says that athletes should not be employees. Because once they become employees, then you're getting into short and long-term disability, pensions, like it would just crater the whole thing. But in our coalition circumstances, we're literally asking for a relative nominal amount of money to benefit the athletes in the Olympic sports, which represent 78% of the athletes in the NCAA. So we're trying to find that balance between, we realize football and basketball brings a lot of benefits, a lot of visibility, a lot of marketing.
Revenue to athletic departments.
Universities across the country. And so, in situations where these athletes are helping to generate these large media rights deals, it seems like, some additional compensation for them makes sense. It's just like how you find that balance between more fairly compensating those football and basketball players and making sure there's enough revenue left for these Olympic sports. A sport like wrestling, we have the second largest percentage of first-generation college-bound students. So a lot of these Division I wrestling programs, it's as much about access to college as it even an opportunity to wrestle in college. And there's lots of other sports that benefit from the same sort of things. But I'd be interested in your maybe advice to us about, as we're advocating down in Washington, D.C. I mean, you do this for a living, we don't, do you have any advice on, particularly as it relates to this funding floor, about what we might
Yeah.
how we might present it in a way that it'd be more palatable to both parties.
Well, I liken this to, and I'm certainly you're well aware, remember well when they were talking about removing wrestling as an Olympic sport.
Oh, sure.
And boy, did it absolutely require people's voices to be heard. It's the same thing. Back then, they were trying to convince the IOC, right, and make the case. Here is, especially when you're advocating for law, there's obviously a lot more people.
Sure.
They have other people in their ears. It's so critically important that whatever gets put on that piece of paper that they're going to end up voting on is 100% the right thing. And that requires people, a lot of people, to know exactly what they're looking to do. And you have to make contact with the people. You have to find champions in the House and the Senate who are going to champion your cause and push back against people who may be pushing it from a different angle to do something that might end up being hurtful. But the fact is that the discussion's happening. Force yourself to be part of that table discussion. And because if you don't, you may not like exactly what the outcome is going to be.
So to get as many groups as possible aligned with
100%. And that same strategy occurs whether we were fighting to get pediatric cancer research, we're fighting for school choice, whether we were fighting for girls wrestling.
Sure.
Think of all those the collaboration of groups and people and families who all came to make their voices heard and kept the pressure on. And that's the same thing that's going to happen here. Looking for a law to pass. So you got to follow that same kind of strategy in order to get it done. And I think there's some folks who obviously have athletic backgrounds down there. We certainly have one, a fellow wrestler, and Dave McCormick, who was captain of the U.S. Army wrestling team.
By the way, he's been very helpful in this.
Oh,
We've met
yeah.
with him.
He's been great.
leader.
And hopefully, because you need someone like that's on the inside that's going to have those conversations with some of his colleagues to get it done. But yeah, this is full court action time on this issue.
Sure. Have you heard, just in your discussions with different constituent groups, any viable strategies for the transfer portal? I mean, obviously, it's so disruptive. And I mean, have you heard anything that seems maybe not perfect, but could have,
I've heard some things that in discussions. I think I might have been even Nick Saban I was watching talking about some of this. Like there needs to be. You only should get so many shots at it.
Sure.
Right. There should be a process for special exceptions that can't be abused.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you need a system that has some sort of semblance of loyalty for a certain period of time. Like when I was playing in the Arena League, guess what? They were paying me so much money. I had a contract with them that I had to play my position for a certain period of time. It should be no different here. I think there needs to be a time frame associated with it. Like if you're going to participate, we're going to give you that free education, and you're going to get this NIL deal. On the back end of it, there should be some senses, at least we're going to have you for a certain period of time.
Sure.
And they should be held accountable to that. And if they don't, guess what? That institution should get their resources back. I mean, that to me is how the everyday world works.
Sure.
You don't do your end of the bargain. You get your money back. And I think we need a good dose of that. And right now it's the Wild West, and it will not work.
Well, speaking of the way it works in the world, so usually an agreement does protect both parties. So I've wondered, and I haven't fully thought through this. So I'm not suggesting this is the silver bullet, so to speak, but it does make you wonder if a scholarship could be a 1 year, a 2 year, a 3 year, 4 year, or 5 year, and if both parties agree to it, just as the way it would in the real world.
Yeah.
If an athlete wants out early, there's some type of a payout, some sum of money. It's my understanding in the academies that I think once you get a certain number of years in the academy, if you leave, you have to pay back the money to the academy. So a concept like that, where both parties are protected. In some cases, maybe the wrestler's not as good or the athlete's not as good as the coach thought, and in that case, it protects the athlete.
Yeah.
If the athlete has a 5-year agreement, the athlete's protected for 5 years. But it just seems like if we're in the business to prepare these young people for success in life,
Right.
and if that's how it works in the real world,
Right.
I've always wondered, where are the shortcomings of just doing it like it works in the real world.
Well, and think about, on the other end of this, listen, on both ends of it,
Yeah.
on the professional side of things, there are clear stipulations that you're under contract for this. Yeah, you may know when you have to declare you exercise a 5th year of a contract that was part of the original deal before you become a free agent. Then look at the other end of the spectrum. Here in Pennsylvania, you're able to transfer out of your school system. There's the natural break after your 8th grade year.
Right.
But if you transfer for athletic purposes after that, you may be sitting out for your postseason now. We run into this issue all the time in PA. I think, if you designed a system that respected that loyalty, because that's a big decision. You're making that decision. They're recruiting you. You want to give your skills to them. There should be very few exceptions to breaking that in my mind. And listen, a change of coaching staff unexpectedly.
Sure. Right.
Absolutely.
Sure. Right.
Is there a scenario too where, hey, you just can't see, there's a guy who says, man, they just brought in 3 quarterbacks.
Yeah,
I'm a
right.
sophomore. I'm never going to see.
Yeah.
Should they get one shot at
Yeah.
some point? I think, well, all I know is this. The way it is now is being completely abused.
Right.
I've seen multiple stories this year where one in particular, a team that had qualified, was I don't know if it was Illinois or Indiana, one of them, that a big school, between the 2 seniors who were graduating, after that, every single player entered the portal, and there's not a single returning player on that basketball team. Like, who would have ever thought?
Right. Yeah.
Like, that was the case. So, and the other thing, I'll also say this too. It's also impacting opportunities for kids coming out of high school, because now what you're seeing coaches looking to they're recruiting from the portal.
Right.
And so there's less and less opportunities for kids. And so you're going to see more and more kids trying to find ways, I was a great basketball player, at least I thought, but I'm not good enough to, over a guy that's been playing in a college for 3-4 years. Right. And now he's losing the opportunity to get a potential scholarship. You're seeing that really happen today.
Right. So we're going down the road of we're partnering with an organization that wants to do the largest study of its kind to really demonstrate the real educational value of educationally based athletics. So, there's certainly a role for club sports in all sports across the country, but I believe in my heart that there are some things you get in the educational model that you don't get in the club model. Like in the educational model, you can tether eligibility to being academically eligible. You can tether eligibility to compete to progress towards degree completion. There's a lot of really good educational outcomes that you can tether in high school and college sports that you really can't.
Well, how about their well-being? We have athletic trainers who take care of injury and other things that are.
Exactly. Right. Generally speaking, the interscholastic and intercollegiate system is much more affordable than the club structure. A lot of students from lower socioeconomic regions can't. I'd be interested in sort of the values that you feel like you got out of sport that just benefits you every day in the incredibly challenging job you have of trying to reach compromise and work with people with a lot of different opinions on really important initiatives.
Yeah.
What were some of the educationally based outcomes that you got?
So,
in wrestling and football.
So for me, and we talked about this in the podcast earlier. I look at my life and I can say with 100% certainty, and a lot of people don't like hearing this, but I put as much value, if not even a little more. It was important to learn. It's important to get that books, but my time in a wrestling room and on the gridiron, the lessons I learned and all those intangible things, the teamwork, your work ethic, how well you prepare. Like for me, the value of what that meant to my life, the value I've seen it apply to other people's lives, how to be coachable. Right?
Sure.
And if you're doing stuff wrong, are you able to be corrected on it? Right. For me, that to me is something that, and certainly as we all know, coaches don't put up for people showing up late.
Sure.
Right? Late was if you showed up 10 minutes early.
If you're
right?
not early, you're late.
And I think these are all lessons. And from a team approach, for me. and how you strategize, the strengths that you have in different people that are around me and helping to get things done. It all mirrors the things that I feel were really important in my life. I also shared a story earlier too. You know, before I got into elected politics, I ran a juvenile detention center, a lot of at-risk kids. And one thing I always noticed, and actually did a research paper on this when I was finishing up my degree, is we rarely saw kids coming in that door that were involved in after-school activities like sports,
Makes sense.
you know, band, things they had to work with other people. They were competing and striving for something bigger. You know, sports definitely has been a game changer in my life and continues to be so. And I know this, the day I feel like I can't compete anymore to get something done, you know, which drives so many athletes, I use that to drive myself now. And the day I lose that, or I'm ready to step off the mat, right? Then it's the day I pass the baton to somebody else.
Like I said, I worry more and more about sports in our country, because sports in our country is very unique to the world in that we're in the education space. I really worry about it one day getting pushed out of education to a completely club structure like most of the way it is around most of the world. And I'm from a family of educators, but I just so believe that there are really important outcomes in the educational model that you just 100%. Don't get in that club model. And
well, think of the required study halls, the required GPA.
Right.
And I'll give you a stat. Our state system of higher education has one of the largest, and they're struggling with their enrollment now, but they have the highest percentage of student athletes are what really are filling a lot of these campuses. And I think people underscore what it would mean if you did not, I'll use my own son as an example, and he's probably gonna be mad to say it. You know, we'll see where the basketball journey goes for him. He's getting some looks, but he knows this, if he doesn't have an opportunity to continue chasing that dream and playing for a few more years, he has in his heart that he wants to go in the Army. He goes, Dad, and he lists all the reasons, you know, the GI Bill, to pay for school, health care, a paycheck, you know, all those things, staying physically active. I think if less opportunities there are for athletics for college student athletes, I think you're going to see even further decline of kids in today's world that actually choose to go to a four-year institution. I really believe that.
It's interesting you say that. So in wrestling, we've helped to start 438 new men's and women's intercollegiate programs since 2000, and what's driving that is this enrollment crisis. And Mike, is 2026? Is that the sort of supposed to be the worst before it starts improving? To your knowledge,
well, I've
been told
for PA. I think the problem is now.
Now,
I mean,
I know it's now, but isn't 2026 like the? You know, I've been told that it's all due to there's just fewer college students out there, and there's too many colleges.
Well, we have. I think we're right now, and I think we have had this smallest kindergarten enrollment since 1986. It's working its way through. That just happened 2 years ago.
Right.
They expect the number of our high school graduates to decline another 5% by 2030, another 10% by 2035.
So 26
so
isn't
nationally,
the end of it.
Nationally, it might be better in some, because there are states that Florida, down in the South, the Carolinas that are seeing growth. So it's certain that could be a national statistic. But I know in PA, we need more kids. I mean, look at Penn State's reduction in their branch campuses. Look at when myself and Senator Tomlinson did the two triplets in Pennsylvania, Penn West and Commonwealth. But one thing we were sure not to do, and people gave us a lot of grief about it. They wanted us to combine all the sports teams too. And I understand it from a financial perspective. But I said, if you're struggling with enrollment on each of these campuses, don't take away these. I think you're going to work against yourselves. So, but we'll see what the future holds there. But we're seeing this decline that we need to turn around. But like I said a little earlier, when you see a Penn College of Technology certainly has sports programs. Thaddeus Stevens, they're sports programs, and they're growing. You see students making different decisions, and but it's important. It's an important gateway for a lot of kids to make that college decision. And I fear that if they have less of those opportunities, you're going to see more of them. And it's not a fear, it's just reality. I think they're going to go in different directions.
So that's my last question is, any advice that you would have just to the wrestling community as it relates to high school sports? Like,
boy, I'd really love to see the community really rally around whatever, that
Well, I continuing to have opportunities for our young men and young women on the high school level is so critically important. And despite everything we just talked about, declining numbers and all that, to see things that have advanced and rooted and just taken off, like the sanctioned girls wrestling in PA, when you see the NFL pushing girls flag football opportunities, and which I'll tell you what, for guys and for wrestling, that's an incredible thing to see when they're adding women's sports.
Sure.
I mean, we've seen way too often the other occur because they don't have enough of that equivalent out there, a number of opportunities. Is to be vocal and to push for these kind of opportunities wherever they can be. I mean, I'm old enough to remember, Lebanon Catholic used to be an absolute powerhouse in like girls basketball. They had decent, doesn't exist anymore. To see a school that had like the winningest girls high school basketball program in the state doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
But more importantly is though we love to see a lot more people getting into the sport of wrestling too.
Sure.
I think the underlying message of how important for health, well-being, the intangibles in life that help drive people to make them successful, to get young people involved in a sport. May not be wrestling.
Yeah,
That's okay.
Sure.
But do it. The benefits are tremendous.
Well, thank you.
No, thank you, Mike. It's always great to see you.
Likewise.